tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Honestly, it feels like we're just learning how to make excuses for colonizers.
The Burnaby School District apologizes for an exam question asking how Indigenous people benefited from colonization.
It's repurposing the broadcast.
Victoria postpones Canada Day celebrations in light of the discovery at the former Kamloops residential school.
I think people need to stop and take a look at what Victoria has done.
Will other cities do the same?
It's a little bit scary, but I'm going to keep walking.
Walking while Muslim. Serious questions and courage after the horrific killing of a Muslim family in Ontario.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. The Burnaby School District has issued an apology about a question that appeared on a social studies exam this week. The question asked students to explain how First Nations people in Canada benefited from being colonized. As Michelle Gassoub reports, the school board is now looking into how that question was even part of the test.
And as soon as I read that they took advantage of the colonizers, that's when I stopped reading it.
14-year-old Sophia Melandri was writing a test in her grade 9 social studies class when she came across this question. It asks students to describe how First Nations people took advantage of and benefited from their relationship with colonizers.
The question was horribly worded, and honestly, like most other questions in this course, it was a way to kind of trick us into justifying the actions of the colonizers.
The question appeared next to this sketch of Indigenous people at a trading post being given boots and guns.
It has the effect of upholding some of the key mythologies about Indigenous people that have been created as a product of colonization.
Professor Shannon Leddy says the event isn't isolated, though back in 2015, Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission called for the curriculum about Canada's history with Indigenous peoples to be improved.
Those are all colonial mythologies that are repeated again and again, not only within formal curriculum within schools, but in the informal curriculum that happens outside of schools and our conversations with one another. So I'm really glad to hear when students and parents react to these moments, draw public attention to these moments, because it gives us an opportunity to have this conversation.
The Burnaby School District issued this apology. It reads, "It is inappropriate and worse than that. This kind of question is harmful and could be trauma-inducing for Indigenous youth. This does not represent our values or the true impact of colonization on Indigenous peoples." The school district says it's investigating the source of that material and is reviewing more appropriate learning resources. It will also be reaching out to the students in that class. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
This year's Canada Day celebration in BC's capital has been cancelled. Last night, Victoria City Council unanimously voted to postpone the July 1st event in light of the recent discovery of children's remains at the former residential school in Kamloops. And as Christina Jung reports, Indigenous leaders in the province say it's an example the rest of the country ought to follow.
Before the pandemic, hundreds of people gathered here in front of the Parliament building in Victoria, proudly waving their flags as they celebrated the anniversary of Canada's Confederation. And while fireworks like this had also been planned for this year's virtual celebration in Victoria, a news release from the city said they'll be cancelling it.
I had learned from staff that some of the long-standing Lekwungen participants of Canada Day had indicated to staff on Friday that they weren't going to participate in Canada Day celebrations this year because they're grieving. And so it seemed very odd, verging on problematic, to have a Canada Day celebration without our Lekwungen participants. But that did give reason for pause and asked me and my council to rethink how we approach Canada Day this year.
We did a group vote, and I said, it's up to you whether or not you want to partake, and the general consensus was a no.
Mayor Helps later clarified that the event wasn't canceled altogether, just postponed for later in the summer.
It's repurposing the broadcast, and originally we had hoped to repurpose it on July 1st, but the time between now and then is simply too short to pivot and make it more of a focus on reconciliation and reflection rather than celebrations.
That later celebration will also be planned with the guidance from the Lekwungen people. It's a move that many are commending.
It would give Indigenous people the thought that you can see us and you can see what has happened and how it has impacted us for generations.
Chief Wilson said Victoria's move should spread countrywide.
I think people need to stop and take a look at what Victoria has done and to see how and where they can support and recognize the Indigenous nations that surround them. I think there needs to be a coordinated effort.
The relationship with Canada Day is a complicated one for many Indigenous people.
We shouldn't be ashamed of being Canadian. We should be brave enough to admit that Canada is a work in progress, and I think we could do a lot together, but only if we come together.
Residents in Victoria are still encouraged to acknowledge Canada Day in their own way come July 1st. Christina Jung, CBC News, Vancouver.
The downward trend continues as BC reports 180 new cases of COVID-19 today. Sadly, one more person has died of the virus, bringing our total death toll to 1,730. 162 people are in hospital, 45 in critical care. More than 75% of all adults have received at least one dose of a vaccine in BC. Now, as we prepare to launch into the next phase of reopening next week, some BC attractions are gearing up for a big return. Our Tanya Fletcher joins us live with more. Tanya, is some of the usual summer activities starting to look a bit more normal?
Yeah, many seasonal hotspots are in prep mode to welcome back the masses. Among them, the Sea to Sky Gondola. Now, the anticipated easing of restrictions is especially good news for operators in Squamish. After being sabotaged twice, the freshly repaired gondola reopened to the public today with added surveillance and more security measures. Those gondola cars came crashing down into the mountainside last September for a second time, and the repairs have now been 8 months in the making. The gondola was just destroyed the first time 13 months before that, and in both cases, someone had deliberately cut the cable in the middle of the night. So for now, the visitors are local, but staff are eager to welcome back British Columbians from right across the province.
Readiness, I think, is probably the one word that grabs it all. We've been preparing for this now for eight months. And obviously, given our prior experience, we've evolved our thinking and our approach to business continuity and getting back up and running, so we're very ready.
Another big attraction that's throwing open its doors once again is the Playland. Management says they've put a whole season into preparing to open the gates there. They were disappointed they couldn't open back in May, but they're glad they can today. Now, normally you'd be able to buy a ticket to Playland and go anytime, not tied to any specific date. But as part of their COVID safety protocols, they brought in date-specific tickets to help control capacity. And for now, they're only planning for 25% capacity in the park.
Masks are still mandatory in the lineups and on the rides. We've got social distancing on the rides, and we've got sanitization on the way in and on the way out, and just a much higher level of cleaning protocol throughout the park. As restrictions start to lift, we'll be able to allow more people into the park. We'll be able to expand our hours. We'll be able to add some attractions.
So mark your calendar. Tuesday is when the province is expected to enter the next phase of the restart plan. Dan?
We'll be watching. Tanya Fletcher, thanks very much. BC's tourism and cruise ship industries are very worried about a proposed change to U.S. law that could mean fewer American travelers passing through BC on cruises. The Premier says there's little he could do to stop it.
Suggest that somehow I could have thrown myself in front of this bus and stopped it. It's the height of hubris in my mind.
The law requires American cruise ships to dock at a foreign port between domestic stops. For example, to stop at Vancouver on a Washington to Alaska voyage. U.S. lawmakers have now introduced bills that would change and repeal that law. Victoria's Harbour Authority says the cruise ship industry brings in $2.7 billion to BC. But Horgan argues the proposal does not change people's desire to visit our province. Canada's Minister of National Defence visited Vancouver's Al Jamia Masjid Mosque today and spoke out against Islamophobia and hatred.
We will do everything in our power as a government to root this out. We will set an example for the rest of the world. We will not compare ourselves to other countries to say, oh, no, look, we're better off than another country. No. We have to hold ourselves to our own standard.
Harjit Sajjan took part in the congregational prayer and gave condolences over the deaths of the Afzal family. 4 members of that family were killed while out for a walk in London, Ontario, in what police say was a targeted attack because of their faith. The Prime Minister calls it a terrorist act. Many Muslims in Metro Vancouver are sharing a newfound fear of walking outside their home and in our streets. This after the Muslim family of 4 was struck and killed in London, Ontario last weekend. What police are describing as a targeted attack on their faith. The CBC's Zara Premji, a Muslim herself, walks us through the questions circulating in that community and what some are asking for.
This is my home. This is where I was born. My Muslim identity, it's something I'm so proud of. But admittedly, there are times where I fear it. I don't want to show off my clothing. I don't want to show off my language. When I hear my grandparents speak our language, I say, stop, speak English. People are looking. But my Muslim identity is something I am proud of. I love going for walks as well, and I know many others do. But in one instant, that changed.
When you see people that look like you murdered in cold blood while taking a walk, it's you feel guilty. We're used to seeing people like us be murdered.
This could happen to anyone. It did make me question, how do we feel about walking?
I was scared, my God, because I am a Muslim too, and my skin is brown, so I was walking every time. So I was thinking, what shall I do if I walk every day? What will happen?
It's unbearable. You don't know. In our faith, we believe that we belong to God, right? And that, we belong to God, and to Him we shall return. And we don't know when that is, but it's debilitating to think that if I leave today, will I come home?
Ismailis, Muslim, Hindus, all are same. Why we have to kill innocent people like that?
What is it that caused you to believe that Muslim people are evil?
As my grandparents, I often worry about you going for walks, but now I have this attitude here that you're senior and you're Muslim, you're brown-skinned and you're walking. Do you feel this fear that I'm feeling?
Yes, same thing we feel like that. We are scared.
It's definitely made me question how I look when I'm walking down the street. I actually grew my beard out over the last year, and that's made me feel even more visible as a brown person.
Walking the street with my hijab, this is what my struggle is, and I do it with pride. This is my identity. How much more do I need to assimilate? I speak English, I speak French. I was born and raised here. This is my identity. This hijab is who I am, and under no circumstances would I ever change that.
An event like this, although changes how we approach our walking, but I don't think that's going to stop us from walking. It's certainly not going to stop me.
I'm really scared, but they won't change my life.
We will keep walking. We are Muslims, I know that, but I will keep courage and I will walk.
I'm Zara Premji for CBC News in Vancouver.
Drivers in BC can expect another check in the mail. ICBC plans to send out a second rebate because of lower claim costs during the pandemic.
There was the initial first rebate, and those savings have continued over the past year, and so we're now able, because of ICBC's financial position, to be able to return further COVID savings to the motoring public.
The rebates of about $120 per policy will go out starting in the middle of July. That's on top of the first rebate already sent out. ICBC expects to return almost $1 billion to nearly 3 million customers. A lack of rain this spring in BC's southern interior has turned some areas bone dry. Emergency planners say the drought conditions could mean a very busy summer wildfire season. As the CBC's Brady Strachan explains, they're urging farmers and ranchers to prepare now.
These are the BC apple ambrosias, so found in a farm here in Costin.
Mike Dowell tends to the apple trees on his farm just north of the U.S. border in the Similkameen. The warm spring this year means the crop is ahead of schedule. It's also been unusually dry, and that doesn't bode well for the upcoming wildfire season. Just last week, a fire broke out just north of his farm when a utility company's equipment malfunctioned. The BC Wildfire Service was able to put out the fire, but Dowell says it was a tense couple of hours. The last thing he and his neighbors want is to be displaced during the busy growing season.
We haven't been through an evacuation, thankfully, but we have been through an alert, so we know how to be ready, how to be prepared, and we just carry forward.
The Okanagan region has had an unusually dry spring. That has led to severe drought conditions in some areas, which dries out grasses and other vegetation. In turn, the fire danger rating in some areas is already at high to extreme. Emergency planners say we could be in for a busy wildfire season. This week, the local regional district held seminars for farmers and ranchers on wildfire preparedness.
The key to being prepared for a wildfire is preparing in advance, having a plan, and having a plan can take away the stress if there is a wildfire.
So in case of fire...
Evelyn Campbell knows that kind of stress. Her winery south of Penticton was threatened by an out-of-control fire last summer.
We really didn't expect that it was going to spread. So as it did, it was still very surreal, but eventually we got the notice that we had to evacuate.
The fire crested the ridge above the winery and destroyed a house in a nearby rural neighborhood.
Seeing everything happen overnight with the whole hillside up in flames, it was quite frightening.
She's thankful firefighters were able to put out the blaze and save her winery. But the stress and disruption to her business is not something she wants to live through again. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Penticton.
Time to check in weather-wise with Amy Bell. Concerning to see how dry it is up there, and we know people want to head up there, right?
I know, and everybody wants to get up there, especially as the weather starts to improve. So we'll think about that this month when we're all complaining about January.
Yeah, let's not.
This weather is much needed right across the province. So certainly we're going to be seeing that for the next couple of days in many areas. Currently, we're looking at fairly warm temperatures. We've seen this air coming up from the south over the last day or two, so that's had a bit of a change and leading to these warmer, slightly muggy conditions, you might say. Sitting right now at 13 in Pitt Meadows, 14 out in the Fraser Valley, and 11 in West Vancouver. Taking a look for tomorrow, so we are going to see some showers overnight, and then we will see more rain, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is what we saw today. So we saw this system arriving early this morning. We started off with sunshine, and then we got into some rain this afternoon. The winds did pick up for quite some time. They seem to have settled down, though. So we will see the shower activity on and off throughout the rest of the evening. And then tomorrow, we'll start off with those showers, and then by late afternoon, we'll actually brighten up. So that's your chance to catch some sunshine. Maybe head out to a patio, because you're not going to have that chance on Sunday. Sunday is when we're going to see quite a bit of precipitation. Temperatures around 18 degrees, and then tapering off to showers on Monday, and we'll stay with those temperatures in the low 20s, and then I think it'll be probably Wednesday, Thursday next week that we return to the sunshine. So most areas across the province will be seeing some precipitation over the next several days.
And that is a good thing.
Indeed it is.
Thank you, Amy. Two Filipino tattoo artists are reclaiming distinct styles of Filipino calligraphy and tribal artwork through modern and ancient styles of tattooing. The styles are different, but both focus on keeping Filipino heritage alive. Our John Paulo Mendoza caught up with the artists as part of the CBC's Mabuhay BC series.
These Filipino tattoo artists are keeping their heritage alive with a modern twist. Romeo Reyes tattoos custom Babayan scripts. Babayan is a style of writing used in the Philippines before Spanish colonization. This design roughly translates to the word grace in English.
but I know most parents, like their generation, they're kind of against tattoos, or they see it as like a criminal thing, right? Like, oh, you're in a gang if you got it, or you went to jail. But basically, since the beginning, all Filipinos were tattooed. We were never really, like, we were never Catholic or Christian. That was brought upon us or forced upon us by the Spanish, like, because of colonialism, right? And even King Philip, when he saw the Philippines, he called it the island of the painted people, or the painted ones. I think La Isla de Pintados or something, because everyone was tattooed. You know, it's been brainwashed so much that, like, oh, it's like savage, you know, don't do that anymore. But honestly, like, learning about it, I'm like, whoa, that's so beautiful, you know, like the writing is so dope, and like tattooing, I find that like Filipino Canadians, like, we crave that connection to like our roots.
Mayo Landicho is keeping tradition alive with a tattoo style known as batok. The ink is tapped into the skin using a needle at the end of a stick. Indigenous Filipino communities use these tattoos before colonization to identify one's tribe and life achievements.
Your whole story goes here, so that's why you know it continues, right? So everything, something happened or a new accomplishment. The pattern also goes repetitive because it's been, like they were saying, that it's been passed down from generation to generation, right?
The designs are chosen based on the flora and fauna from the region of the Philippines where the client's family hails from.
Art is a basic form. It's purely, you know, your intention and your artistry. I believe in those things. For me, it's, you know, nothing better than being organic and feel what's in your heart and your mind, just put it and draw it up.
There's a growing interest from younger Filipinos in these pre-colonial styles of art.
I got it so that I could connect to my ancestors, let them know that I'm looking to establish a connection. And then Mayo gave me markings that are, they originate in the province that my mom is from. So in Visaya, or the region that my mom is from.
The artists are motivated by a desire to keep these practices alive.
Because of like colonialism, this and like a lot of other parts of the culture have been pretty much like wiped away, right? And this is something that needs to be shared, you know? And whenever I tell like fellow Filipinos, especially like younger people, about this, they get excited. They're like, what? We have our own writing system? That's so cool.
The batok technique is passed down orally. Today, it is only practiced by a handful of people around the world. Landicho says he eventually hopes to pass his skills on to the right artist.
That's what my goal is, you know, to keep the tradition alive and all this art form, right? I don't want this wonderful thing to just perish and, you know, gone.
John Paul Mendoza, CBC News, Vancouver.
Just a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs. CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Amid loosening restrictions, Muslims in London, Ontario headed to Friday prayers. The somber mood as the city tries to come to terms with an attack on a family. Next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Pandemic life has radically changed what a lot of people do, and with whom. Two friends noticed that and were not feeling great about it. They started going on long hikes to deal with anxiety and depression. Now they're sharing their experience on social media to try to help others. Laura Meter has their story.
These friends say they've learned a lot about themselves and pandemic life thanks to a new hiking habit. Debbie Barry and Chrissy Adams say when all the restrictions started, they felt lost. The co-workers, both working from home now, talked about it and decided walking might help.
I have dealt with depression and anxiety in my life in the past, and I felt like I was sort of sliding down that way again. And this really, you know, sort of turned things around for me that way.
It was how do we kind of get out there and just be us and basically ward off any of those bad feelings that were kind of coming. Like last year was a little tough with that, so.
They walk together every week and do a blog about it too. They take photos along the way and post it to their Facebook page, Trail Adventures with Chrissy and Debbie. They hope it encourages others to get out.
Nature, trees. Oh, by sharing it with others on social media, it's been really opening up the different trail options to some that a lot of people don't know about.
And we've heard from people who said, "Oh, I don't. Where is that one? Can I, I'd like to try that one out. Can I take my kids?"
They have about 50 followers, and sometimes a friend joins them. It's a great workout, but they say this is more about mental health.
Your senses are basically being stimulated by sound. Like right now we hear the birds chirping, you get the water flow. It just basically calms you.
It's been really great to have somebody, willing to be out there with me and be where I'm at.
They enjoy the scenery and don't stress if they take a wrong turn. They call this treatment vitamin N, or vitamin nature, and they accept all versions of it.
We've been out in some rain and snow and hail and all kinds of it, but have really been enjoying it.
The pandemic may have led them here, but even when life returns to normal, they say they'll keep walking because they now know this is what they were missing. Laura Meter, CBC News, Hazelbrook.
Back in a few moments with more national news. Stay with us. This will be a weekend of mourning for many in London, Ontario, as the family of 4 killed in what police believe was an anti-Muslim attack is laid to rest. People gathered to call for an end to hate and to remember the lives cut tragically short with one brutal act. Magda Gabriel-Selassie is at the London Muslim Mosque tonight.
All ages, all races, all faiths, taking the street back in a march to stamp out hate.
Everybody just wants to live in peace and everybody just wants to live safely.
No matter what, we're all human beings. No matter what the color, the race, or religion.
They started at the site of the fatal attack, then walked more than 6 kilometers to the mosque where the family prayed. They carried with them the memory of 4 family members struck down by a driver police say was filled with hate for their faith.
Allahu Akbar. That's right. We're here to break down stereotypes.
Inside the mosque, Friday prayers for the family rang through the air earlier. Some for the lone survivor, Fayez, have been answered.
The doctors expect him to make a recovery, and nothing like his growth and his long-term health will not be compromised by what he went through.
Left for the 9-year-old today a note and a teddy bear to hug, while friends of his lost loved ones hang on to their memories.
And you can see Medea with her daughter.
When she was completing her master's in environmental science, Jason Gerhard was Mediha Salman's supervising professor.
She was just enthusiastic, dynamic, passionate.
Photos show her curling and gathering with friends. She also cleaned up the earth, advancing technology to do it.
She really had a real impact in academia, but also in the real world. And they're applying it now to get these chemicals out of the ground.
Soon, she would have completed her PhD. Now, instead of a graduation, her loved ones prepare for the funeral. She, her husband, her daughter, and her mother-in-law will be laid to rest tomorrow.
The CBC's Magda Gabriel-Selassie reporting in London, Ontario tonight. MPs, meanwhile, are calling on the federal government to convene an emergency meeting on Islamophobia by the end of July. In the House of Commons today, they unanimously passed a motion by the NDP for a national action summit on Islamophobia.
All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Accordingly, the motion's carried.
It was brought forward by London area MP Lindsay Matheson, who said the Liberal government needs to go beyond expressing condolences. Saskatchewan First Nations leaders are calling on Roman Catholics to boycott Sunday Mass until their church does more for residential school survivors.
And you can pray at home in your own way, and you don't need a middleman to pray to the Creator, to God.
The leaders also want the Pope to come to Canada and apologize. The G7 summit kicked off in Cornwall, England today, the first face-to-face meeting since 2019. Top of the agenda, finding a way out of the COVID pandemic, as Canada commits to share up to 100 million COVID vaccine doses with the world. But as Tessa Arcilia reports, the ongoing health crisis is one of many global issues.
Hundreds of climate activists in the streets of St. Ives, chanting, making as much noise as they can as leaders meet for the G7 summit just a stone's throw away. This beach is visible from where the leaders are meeting. They're hoping that their voices will be heard. They said that they have heard promises before, but what they want to see right now is action.
The amount of change that needs to happen right now is immense, so we're really hoping that in the G7 they're going to discuss how to be able to hopefully stick to the Paris Agreement, which they haven't done so far.
More agreements to come, especially when it comes to vaccine sharing. Canada is expected to share up to 100 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines with countries in need.
The exact proportions will be in terms of cash contributions and in-kind contributions. That will be summarized on Sunday. But there will be no negative impact on the vaccination plan for Canadians within Canada.
It follows pledges of 500 million by the U.S. and 100 million by the U.K. G7 nations are set to pledge up to 1 billion doses to the world's poorest nations, which critics say is still a drop in the ocean. After a day of talking, an evening of dining. G7 leaders attended their first face-to-face reception with the Queen in attendance. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, Cornwall.
Ontario says it is time. Enough people have had their first vaccine dose, and cases have come down enough. So that province that's endured one of the longest shutdowns in the world nudged a bit more open today. And as Jacqueline Hansen tells us, even that little bit is going a long way.
So right now you guys are going to keep jogging. This is one way to get off to a strong start.
We're going to take advantage of the space, and we're going to do some explosive running drills. We're going to do some sprinting.
For the first time in 10 months, this fitness trainer gets to see his students in action in person.
So to do this like this again, like I'm so excited.
But the small outdoor class is more than just a workout.
It's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel almost.
As online fitness classes take a back seat, so can online shopping. Non-essential retail shops with street access can open at 15% capacity. Those stores inside malls are still closed.
I feel like I'm going to start spending a lot more money.
This retailer says reopening with new restrictions each time is a challenge, but
we need it to be open. We can't, we've only been open 6 or 7 weeks this year.
For many, the first taste of normal life is on a restaurant patio.
Feels like freedom. It feels great. Cheers. Cheers.
And it's a chance to get back to work.
We have about 35 staff, and we've had to lay off about 15 of them. And they're all coming back as of this weekend.
Though there's a long way to go and COVID-19 is still a threat. There are several hotspots in Ontario for the Delta variant, the one that hit India hard. In northern Ontario's Porcupine region, there's concern over rising cases, so it's not reopening. Even elsewhere, some are worried this reopening will lead to more people getting sick.
And then they'll just panic again and shut things down.
The owner of this Ottawa restaurant hopes that doesn't happen.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. If we have to close again, that would be a really difficult blow.
An unusual artistic approach to protest. The painters who have embedded themselves into the old-growth forest protests on Vancouver Island. That's next.
The
headlines are big, bold, and bad. Canada's newspaper industry is in a lot of trouble. Right across the country, papers have fallen victim to layoffs, labor disputes, even decreased circulation. The latest casualty, the Montreal Gazette, which today eliminated 59 jobs and blamed it all on the recession. The CBC's Neil MacDonald now on Canada's newspaper woes.
David Perks pulled the plug on the Montreal Star 13 years ago. Today, as publisher of Montreal's remaining English-language daily, he killed 59 more jobs. The difference is the Gazette is making money, just not enough money.
We are taking these steps to maintain the profitability and the long-term integrity of the Gazette. We're not waiting until the thing is unsalvageable.
Employees knew this was coming. Last week, they refused management demands to give up wage increases and holidays. Reporter Andy Riga thinks he'll be out of work by August.
Pretty bleak. Yeah, I'm probably leaving. I don't know.
But there isn't much anywhere else either. Across the country, newspapers are playing hardball with their unions. In Toronto, the biggest paper in the country has been on strike for more than a week. In Manitoba, the Winnipeg Free Press has just laid off 59 people. At the traditionally profitable Ottawa Citizen, management is demanding a wage freeze and has raised the subject of layoffs in a letter to staff. And in Vancouver, where Southam operates the Sun and the Province, senior management has suggested cutting 500 jobs. There have already been some layoffs at the Vancouver papers, and for years there have been rumors that one of them will fold. But this union rep says all anyone knows for sure is that something is coming.
Are we waiting for the other shoe to drop, or are they going to come here and attempt some layoffs or salary rollbacks or something? Or have we seen it all already?
But publishers also know the traditional daily newspaper is a dinosaur. Readers are demanding more specialized information. Advertisers want select audiences, and television news grows more and more immediate. The problem is how to change, where to aim coverage. It's a fundamental question, and one that has many print journalists worried about the very survival of their craft as they know it. Neil MacDonald, CBC News, Montreal.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight for you on CBC Vancouver News.
Like most other questions in this course, it was a way to kind of trick us into justifying the actions of the colonizers.
A Burnaby student says she was stunned by the question. A social studies exam this week asked students to explain how First Nations people in Canada benefited from being colonized. The school board is now apologizing and trying to figure out why it was even part of the test.
Seemed very odd, verging on problematic, to have a Canada Day celebration without our Lekwungen participants.
The city of Victoria has now cancelled its Canada Day celebration for July 1st. It comes after the Tecumloops Teshkwepmik First Nation announced it had found the remains of hundreds of children at the former residential school in Kamloops. Some Indigenous leaders say other cities ought to follow Victoria's lead.
I'm really scared, but they won't change my life. I'm going to carry on same thing.
The horrific killing of a Muslim family out for a walk in London, Ontario, has some Muslims in Metro Vancouver concerned, even scared about their everyday strolls. But amid the fear, some say they will continue to walk. The Queen Victoria statue at the BC Legislature has been vandalized after a protest earlier today. Demonstrators gathered in Victoria to demand more clarity around the provincial government's decision to halt the logging of old-growth forests on Vancouver Island. The rally comes a day after police made 8 more arrests at an encampment near Port Renfrew. Our CBC Arts team caught up with a few protesters at the Eden camp in April who are using art to bring attention to that cause.
Painting here is, I guess, a type of activism, but it's more of an advocacy. I just have like a lot of concern about this place. So in that way, these paintings serve the overall movement as advocacy for the forest. My name is Jeremy Herndl, and I'm a painter. I'm here in Eden Grove, this vestige of old-growth forest, of ancient forest, near Port Renfrew, BC, making large-scale portraits of these large-scale ancient cedars. Some of them are 1,200 years old. That's the one. She sure looks different today. Some of them are fleshy and red. Some of them are ropey and sort of a dusty purple. Some of them are carpeted in green. So there's this big burl, but then there's this one here. It looks like a figure sort of curled up in the fetal position. So I keep thinking that like it's this old woman in the tree. Painting a portrait is a very intimate experience. When you are looking at something and touching it with your eye and then looking at the painting and touching that spot with your paint at the same time, there's this intimate conversation with this tree. The difference between an ancient forest and a second or third growth forest is pretty profound. The ancient forests haven't been logged. In British Columbia, there's less than 3% of the productive, low-lying ancient forests remaining. Eden Grove is one of several locations that the Fairy Creek blockade is wanting to protect from logging by Teal Jones Group. This is one of the standoffs here to try to prevent industry from liquidating this place. The Teal Jones filed for an injunction to get the blockade out of the way so they could come up here and do their logging. Teal Jones was granted their injunction, and that they could use the force of law to remove the blockaders so that they could come in and take these forests. It's a helicopter. I wonder if that's the RCMP scoping us out again. This artisan residence sort of functions at arm's length from the blockades. I'm making a painting, so as far as I know, that's not against the law. Art fills a specific niche in the overall effort to generate awareness about the situation here. We came up with this plan to, we're gonna have an artisan residence, and I'll be the first one, and then after I do my stint, then there'll be other artists. The more artists who are engaged with this place, the wider the reach, the bigger the voice. So we need more artists coming out here who are using different methodologies and different approaches. I've been asked many times what I intend to do with these portraits. I would like them to be exhibited in conjunction with the facts about the endangered ancient forests. It's not just these big trees that matter. It's the forest itself that is the valuable space. And the whole world needs to know about what's at stake here.
Coming up, unlocking the mysteries of the COVID long hauler. Why do some people recover faster while others have lingering symptoms? That's next. And at 6:43, a live look at the Lonsdale Quay and Burrard Inlet. Rain has arrived on the south coast. Good for gardens, good for the fire danger. The weekend has a bit of a variety pack. Amy Bell breaks it all down after this. A Coquitlam man had a rude awakening early this morning when a hairy intruder broke into his car. Yep, that's a bear busting into the family vehicle. Security cameras showed it about 3 in the morning. A young Ursine used its paw to open 2 car doors. The bear tore up a car seat and snacked on, among other things, cracker crumbs, half-eaten sandwiches, even a diaper or 2. But the burly bandit did leave something in return, a lingering smell that the owners called unbearable. And today, the owner said, unfortunately, he's not covered by ICBC for bear. Turns out he also had 2 pugs indoors that slept through the whole thing.
You know, I had a pug for many years, and I can confirm that is exactly how they would act.
They're a great doorstop.
They are delightful furry rocks. They really are a gift.
And they probably don't like rain much.
No, they don't. Who does?
Oh, that's all right. They don't have to be out in it today if they have a nice place to go inside.
This is true. In fact, yeah, we had a bit of a mixed bag this morning. We started off with lots of blue sky, and then we headed into some fairly intense shower activity. The winds really picked up around Metro Vancouver. Right now, things are sort of leveled off for a lot of areas. We're seeing that system tracking further out into the Fraser Valley and even seeing a few random breaks of blue sky. For the most part, though, we are going to continue to see some showers tonight, and they will continue through until tomorrow morning. And a fairly wet weekend. We'll catch a little bit of sunshine on Saturday, but not until late in the day. So we'll take a look at what's heading our way. As you can see, sort of overnight, things quite scattered, and then we'll see another resurgence early in the morning. Then by Saturday afternoon, we start to see some sunshine, and then we see another system moving in on Sunday. Sunday, I suspect, at least for Metro Vancouver, is when we're going to see a lot of precipitation. A little bit of a mixed bag as well right across the province. Quite unsettled in Comox tomorrow. In fact, I'd say the northern tip of Vancouver Island will get the most rain throughout the weekend. But then gorgeous with a mix of sun and cloud in Victoria, mix of sun and cloud in Whistler. All of these areas, it's later in the day that we're going to see that sunshine. So plan those activities for late in the day. Very unsettled for Prince George, so the interior, southern interior, all looking very unsettled with unfortunately a risk of thunder and lightning. Not ideal with those dry conditions. Unsettled with a high of 15 in Dease Lake. Just showers for Prince Rupert and for Port Hardy. And the 5-day forecast. So yes, late afternoon sunshine tomorrow. Sunday will be the soaker. And then Monday we just ease it off to a chance of showers. Bit of heavier rain though on Tuesday. And we dry out on Wednesday. And we could start to see some sunshine. Thursday I think is when we're going to get back into those warmer temperatures and some sunny skies.
Okay, but again, rain is good.
Rain is very good right across the province.
Sounds great. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
One of the big mysteries about COVID-19 is why some people who have it show no symptoms while others suffer long-term effects. These so-called long haulers could make up 30% of patients, but researchers don't know yet why. As Philip Lishanok reports, the medical community and COVID survivors are meeting together virtually to share what they know.
You feel like, okay, you're feeling better, but then all of a sudden your body starts shutting down completely. It's like turning the lights off.
This tech executive went from being energetic and athletic to being unable to move or even talk like she used to. Her muscle, nervous, and immune systems were impacted. A 5-minute walk would make her feel wiped out. Initially, doctors were unsure whether she had COVID-19 until she tested positive.
When I was feeling all these symptoms, the doctors were surprised, were shocked, because I didn't have respiratory issues. I had everything else.
A panel heard similar stories that, just like Dagger, early long-haul COVID-19 patients had a hard time being taken seriously.
I was told that it couldn't possibly be COVID.
One COVID long-hauler who has had symptoms for 15 months was first told she couldn't possibly have it.
I have ran into barriers of care. I have been told that, you know, I'm basically neurotic, that I am anxious. One doctor told me it was probably menopause.
I'm going to give a very high-level overview.
Researchers on the panel are comparing the experiences of patients with COVID-19 for more than a year. People suffering debilitating symptoms from extreme fatigue to neurological impairment, who are seeking treatment but feel abandoned by the healthcare system. This researcher is looking into whether systemic discrimination has played a part.
Because we live in a very multi-ethnic, multiracial sort of communities, especially where I am in Toronto, we do try to have inclusion of different races and ethnicities. And it's not been the easiest thing.
That's because not everyone may feel comfortable sharing their experience.
I want the old me back. I want to feel normal.
It's been 8 months, and now she's had a vaccine and is receiving treatment. She hopes by sharing her experiences with researchers, doctors, and policymakers, they can learn how to better take care of patients with emerging or novel diseases. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Oakville.
How much would you pay for that painting? All right, how much would you pay if you knew a dog had done it? Why these are hot sellers. Next.
Elijah Rafoul has a knack for being able to go up and catch a football, but it's even better for him when he can grab it over top of one of his classmates.
Oh, you just get to brag about them, and it's so fun to do that to them.
Kids like Elijah haven't had many opportunities to boast about a great play with their friends in the past year.
Oh, nice catch.
But this new flag football program, co-founded by Josh Ackerflug and Stephen Rabinovich, called Jocks, crafted a way to keep the game going within the boundaries of Quebec's pandemic health restrictions.
That's really been our key, is being as flexible and accommodating to all of the families and kids as much as possible.
By adapting Jocks into a mostly after-school program where students remain within their class bubbles, they were able to keep the game going while most other sports were shut down. They focus on mostly football's fundamentals of catching and defending, with participation being paramount. Rabinovich says parents appreciate that kids can learn the game without the same risks associated with playing tackle football.
A lot of parents have said, my kid doing flag football, really? And all of a sudden they come out, and the key really has been our formula, which is if you love kids and you want them to be active and you want them to be safe, this was the program for you.
Oliver Sinterbaum says he wants to play tackle football, but his parents were hesitant to allow him to do it. After a year of playing Jocks, he says they're warming up to the idea.
At the start, I was not allowed to play tackle football. I was only doing flag, but now they're still a little bit on the edge, but it will come and go. You'll see.
Rabinovich says many of the more than 250 kids who signed up to play Jocks last year would have never played the game otherwise.
They are just really loving the game, and who knows, maybe when a couple are drafted into the CFL or NFL in a few years from now and they win some awards, they'll be able to go up and mention us and Jocks flag football as a stepping stone.
Douglas Gellivan, CBC News, Montreal.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver News at 6 host Anita Bath at 2 amazing events this June. CBC Vancouver is a proud returning media sponsor of the Indian Summer Festival. Get your tickets today. And on June 23rd, Anita will moderate a panel of medical experts at UBC Dialogue Medical Innovations. Where is technology leading us? Learn more at alumni.ubc.ca.
Well, he's no Salvador Dali, Van Golden Retriever, or even Leonardo da Vinci.
That's 3.
That is 3.
But this Alberto Pucci's paintings are fetching a pretty penny for charity. Take a look.
Nice! Very good! Straighten out!
People are crazy about Rogan's artwork. I had started painting myself, and somebody who knows that I do a lot of training with my dog sent me a video of a dog painting and kind of dared me to do it. And like 10 days later, Rogan's painting away. That's kind of like a little plate, like a soft plate that we have a paintbrush attached to with a hole in the middle, and he just puts it in his mouth and he stands in front of the canvas, and then he goes up and he like does a little swipe or dab. He loves to use his brains. Each session it's mixed in with other tricks while we do it, so it's 5 to 10 minutes at a time kind of thing. So we could do one every 4 days if we wanted to, but we typically don't do them that quickly. We've sold them all over North America, overseas. We've sent them to Tanzania, Estonia. He's going to be in an art exhibit in Hong Kong coming up here, all about dogs and art, and he checks both of those boxes, so they wanted to include a Rogan section, so that's pretty cool. We donate everything that we get, so we ask a minimum of $50, but people have donated upwards of $200. They go to our local rescues here in Medicine Hat. We've sent a few up to Calgary as well, but we try and keep everything in southern Alberta. Well, I knew that he was the greatest dog on earth because we all think that our dogs are the greatest dogs on earth. But I didn't quite think that he would get the attention that he would get, that's for sure.
Nice! Woo!
Good to have a hobby.
He's a real, what did you say? Puglo Picasso? I'm giving you full credit.
I also had Jackson Pollock. I wrote down a bunch of other names. I couldn't find something for Bob Ross, Robert Bateman, George O'Keefe, Group of Seven. If you have suggestions, pop them into the Facebook queue. Yeah. You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National tonight with Tanya Fletcher. Take care.